Hello, everyone, and welcome to CDCon. Today, I'm going to speak on the topic gamification strategy for enterprises to enable the mindset shift for SRE and DevOps. So, before I start, I would like to build some context. A lot has been said about the DevOps principles, values, and the three ways. Today, we are going to talk about how do we scale DevOps and SRE thinking, keeping in view these five factors: keeping the motivation up, long term collaboration, gamification, inclusion, and experiential learning. So, before I dig deeper into this topic, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Garima Bajpai, based out of Ottawa, Canada. I'm industry speaker on the topics like digital twin, AI ops, and DevOps. I'm the founder for the Canada DevOps Community of Practice here in Canada. It has three chapters: Toronto, Edmonton, and Ottawa. I welcome you all to join these chapters to see how many community initiatives we have been steering through this community of practice. I'm also the co-organizer for the DevOps Summit in Canada, which happens November 8th and 9th. So I welcome you all there as well. And I'm ambassador with Continuous Delivery Foundation and DevOps Institute. So today's call to action: the mindset shift towards DevOps and SRE. And I have put my credentials below. If you want to connect with me, I will be happy to connect and discuss my views, my Twitter handle, and my LinkedIn profile. Okay, so let's get started from where we began. And from 2021 onwards, we are seeing some kind of differentiated priorities from the enterprises and also along with the people, right? So, in order to succeed in this new ecosystem of digital um, focus, we would like to kind of understand how these priorities has been changing for the enterprises. So enterprises have understood that the future business opportunities will require rethinking of the strategies, how they ideate, experiment, co-create, incubate these ideas, and build long-term value. And this will require fostering community ownership to enhance the capacity to innovate. Definitely, it will need people focused approach as well as rethinking around how you integrate into the communities who are steering the change and the transition from the bottoms up. There's another side of the story when we think about an enterprise level strategy for the mindset shift. We need to focus on people and what people would be transitioning into 2021 and beyond. Improving skills to contribute and maintain is on everybody's priority list. Contribution towards critical business question. People have started to understand that they have a lot more to offer if they foster collective innovation, collective thinking around critical business questions. Contributors are not only coders, and let me say it again: contributors are not only coders. So we need to be inclusive, and we need to find more ways and possibilities to include all skill set, cross-functional collaboration. Um, we also believe that people feel that it is empowering to co-create. We continue to learn and grow through community involvement, and we, as people, want to feel ownership and um, association and belonging to the ideas, the experimentation, and even the new ways. So, taking a look at the priorities for 2021, I would like to begin this journey of SRE and DevOps scaling from a grassroots perspective. And I've read a lot of books. I kind of follow a lot of conversation around DevOps and SRE since um, at least 5 to 6 years. So there's a lot to be learned here. The complexity of production systems are growing. There is an approach to modern service management initiatives. It will definitely require new kind of thinking, and we all realize that it's a team sports. Great SREs and DevOps are not hired. You'll have to inculcate that culture to enable those practices within the organization. And treating operations as a software problem remains at the core of the transition and the movement which we kind of are heading towards. So there's many things which bring DevOps and SRE practices together and make them powerful. So in my mind, it's a changed way of thinking. Now, building consensus with variety of stakeholders where cross-functional boundaries are blurring, recalibrating expectations through uh, SRE practices where we discuss, budget policies, error policies, safety quotients. So there is a lot of recalibration needs to be done. Guiding the organization from low to no toil is a daunting task. And when it is for bigger enterprises, it becomes more complex. Improving resilience by simplification is the key here. And we need to kind of continuously understand the power of practices like observability that maintains that cadence, um, and bringing that collective wisdom, cross-functional collaboration around these kind of difficult questions, and prioritizing a data-driven approach. It needs and requires a different way of thinking, different way of collaboration, and creating trust in an organization where we transition safely into the new environment. Now, having said that, um, we at the DevOps community of practice at Canada, we believe that this mindset shift can be achieved through various new methods. And one of these new methods which we have been experimenting is the gamification techniques. And gamification primarily has two important aspects. When you talk about the core aspect, the core belongs to how do we create new knowledge through collective wisdom? How do you unlearn, relearn, and experiment in a collective ecosystem? And the second part is the emotional understanding about, the transition is not at an individual level, but at a collective level. So, how do we foster that collective thinking, a team support attitude towards, making and creating this new culture? So, what we had done at the DevOps community of practice, we took some serious problems and we ideated these serious problems, created some, perspective around difficult questions like AI, automation to AI. Um, what is no ops? Can we foster collective wisdom and bring integrated structured framework for gamification, for unlearning, relearning, and fostering that collective wisdom, empowering way uh, to motivate collective action through games, mini games, simple games. And we have started measuring behaviors before the result as a first step. We also believe that if we foster collective action, we are motivating a bigger change in the way we are building our enterprises for future. So, coming to more tangible aspects of what we have done and what we could propose of doing, if you're starting up your journey towards scaling DevOps and you are struggling to kind of uh, get that desired outcome to make a shift towards this creation of new knowledge, cross over the functional boundaries. There are certain games which had helped us from a community of practice perspective to foster that collaboration. I would name a few of these games, which some of these games we have tried during the summit or through mini events. So anti-fragility games are very popular, and I think this is one of the key starting points when we start looking at an enterprise level gamification strategy. Health check of multi-team software deliveries, and that is evident that when we talk about DevOps, and DevOps in an enterprise grade deployment, it would engage multiple product teams, multi-site teams. So doing a health check game or a squad health check is something which we had found useful through our crowdsourcing initiatives. A shorter sleep time game to encourage cross-functional alignment, so people understand the purpose of going cross-functional and how you can ensure that we will lead it will lead us to the shortest time. Code quality games, personal scorecards. Although I'm not a big fan of scorecards and dashboards, but in some cases and in some context, it can work and it could work. Ranking based toil removal is another way kind of to look at the business problem rather than creating scorecards for individuals. Redeeming points for every non-automated task. This is something which is very interesting, and it comes more. It becomes more exciting when you have a user-facing organization, because then it will create more futuristic opportunities for your business. So as you see that, these are mini games, and when we talk about an enterprise level gamification structure or a strategy, there's no single path to create one size fit all gamification strategy, at least not at this point in time. As a journey of integration of games, experiments, and simulation begins, so does the dialogue of creating an enterprise strategy and framework, which could be different from one organization to another. And the whole idea of building the capital for collective wisdom through gamification is powerful, but it has to be consciously taken forward. And there are certain aspects which we will dig deeper into once we go forward in this presentation. Before we actually move on for crafting an enterprise level gamification strategy, we would also like to highlight we've explored a new way of gamification, that's crowdsourcing. And at the community of practice of DevOps, we have had opportunities to discuss some certain initiatives around crowdsourcing, security platforms, crowdsourcing feature testing, feature validation, user validation, and many organizations have been approaching us for providing guidance feedback through the community for such initiatives, where they can get a quick feedback from the user community on their features, roadmaps, feature validation, and feature testing. So in some cases, we have seen that these initiatives events are like closed events, as well as some might prefer to have a more wider conversation in the community. We also find that introducing researchers in this process is extremely useful aspect, and I would detail it out further in the next slide. We also have gone through certain exciting things like do us a feature campaign, or bring your data, we will help you with your data storytelling. And hackathons, as many companies have explored hackathons and blogathons. I think they are a very powerful way to engage the community and build a wider perspective around new capabilities which are required for this new digital ecosystem. Now, before we actually move forward, I would like to take a deeper dive into how do we actually craft enterprise level gamification strategies, and what are the key components. So before we actually move forward and explore broader categories, just to simplify, it is needless to mention that the gamers who are taking part share the responsibility as well. So there is need to be inclusive, provide feedback on the rules, encourage learning, cooperation, and achievement. We also helped to create points to fair recognition and promote success. Although that's not the starting point or the first step, but triumph is a good way of motivating people. Now, when we talk about a gamification toolbox for an enterprise level organization, it requires more than just a mini game. So there are critical components in this. So game ideation itself is a critical component of the framework that has to be collectively ideated. Our games which we have created, um, um, the biggest challenge is to create those games which can be adopted at scale, right? Just because there will be different persona types in the process which we kind of focus, and our games should focus on individual buy-in as well as team for adoption of DevOps practices, right? Tangible business objectives, some of these tangible business objectives must be outlined before we actually start introducing these mini games. So defining that business problem is also critical. If you know, cross-functional collaboration or improving cross-functional collaboration is one of the business objectives, we will have to start with introducing mini games which will foster collective thinking and helping people to cross over, right? So ideating games which can help us understand the strategic capabilities which, through which you can enhance these kind of uh, aspects, cultural aspects, which help you foster, a better DevOps and SRE um, practices, and onboard to a more mature ecosystem around DevOps and SRE is important. Reducing alignment gaps can be another key strategic objective: speed versus value. And we have done some kind of value discovery challenges to ensure that we bring that point and bring that business problem upfront. And we have seen that there has been a large potential around these possibilities. Also, one of the another aspect would be game validation. As we move along to create that systematic framework, we need to investigate the mechanism of validation of these games, assessing engagement and incentives. According to the experts in our community of practice, we expect a bit of disturbance and downward effect at initial stages. But at once that phase is through and the effectiveness and productivity will only increase, we should address moderate negative effects by applying early validation. And that is the reason why these limiting factors will be able to identify how, what, and when to introduce these mini games associated with this toolbox which we are trying to create. We also advocate do not bring complexity, achieving and ensuring to keep it simple and user friendly. Your gamification toolbox must be able to move everybody forward. Adopting DevOps practices, prioritizing building DevOps community over tools or individuals. Not every problem can be solved through gamification. Choose wisely. And trumping and recognition is important, but that is not the main goal. So these are some of these key findings which we had through the DevOps community of practice. Now, what it leads us to, when organization has taken that first step of introducing, crowdsourcing, gamification, we also need to understand that game design has to be inclusive of persona types. So I think from an advanced perspective, it's feasible and viable to look at supervised learning approaches where we can converge data science capabilities with gamification and leverage the potential of mm, machine learning capabilities. Once you have the data, once you have run several mini games in the ecosystem, I would also advocate that user segmentation and target audience is important. So, if let's say we are going to crowdsource feature validation, feature testing, or bring us your feature campaign, we need to be very careful segmenting that user and also ensuring we hit the right target audience. Even if we have a community of practice, we need to ensure that we go with the right people to create value. So it is also context driven. Unsupervised learning methods can be very helpful to converge this aspect, and this is also an advanced level of integration of these capabilities into the gamification toolbox and the framework which we are creating. Moderation of these games and collecting that data and correlating that data to tell a story is um, extremely important to understand what we gain out of this. How do we create that value? How do we foster that achievement of creating that value and co-creation? So all these aspects cannot be overlooked, but it requires a lot of advanced understanding about data science and data science practices. So we advocate to actually move one step forward with these kind of converging technology capabilities around the potential incremental approach of integration of mini games step by step. I'll not talk more about these simulation apps, but if you're interested, we had created some challenges simulating some apps. Like we have a 5-hour challenge through the community of practice. We had validated this game where our DevOps coach is guiding through this gamification challenge, exploring a stepwise methodology, bringing the DevOps way to products. This game is best for, let's say, product managers, product teams, including UX designer, architects, DevOps engineers, cross-functional teams, where you want to build consensus around prioritization of features, and features versus what kind of value they are, uh, they're bringing in. This includes integration of product inception, user research techniques, and simulation of user stories along with matrices. So we found this a very interesting way of actually ensuring that that transition and shift of mindset happens. Another game which is very powerful, and this is adopted from the agile practitioners, we explored the product box, and we actually took that box approach for co-creating roadmaps. And this is a very simple game. We have done product boxes for DevOps, DevSecOps, SRE, and numerous other intangible aspects, and we have come out with structured and a collective way of bringing roadmaps to the table. Lead time, this is another game which emphasizes on cross-functional collaboration. And lastly, I would say that gamification strategy for enterprise. I build an analogy with Mission Mars. There has to be a balancing act with minimizing the weight and figuring out how to use the least amount of fuel. That means you need to kind of understand that there will be budget constraints and how to monitor that progress in real time with associating this kind of cultural practice where people feel safe to experiment, explore, unlearn. And last point is the real feeling that NASA cannot go alone is also important to understand. It's a team sport, so we have to ensure that nobody is left behind. With that, I would like to end my talk here. If you want to connect with me, we have the DevOps meetup group. We also are hosting the DevOps Summit, as I mentioned. And in case you want some support and guidance for performing a game, you can also reach out to us.